Kambui, also known as William J. Taylor. I'm a formerly incarcerated political prisoner. Prior to my incarceration, I was a member of or affiliated with several so-called militant organizations, such as the Black Panther Party, Republic of New Africa, Congress of Racial Equality, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Black Liberation Army, and other organizations prominent at the time and noted for their participation in the civil rights movement due to my affiliation with these organizations. In 1975, I was falsely accused of murdering 2 white men in Alabama. Despite my innocence, I was illegally detained within the Alabama prison system for over 47 years. Oops. Yes, over 47 years. I believe that the Alabama government reviewed us as a threat to the white supremacy order and used their power to disempower these organizations and its members. During my long-term incarceration at the Alabama correction facilities, I worked as a so-called jailhouse lawyer to help incarcerated people who were deprived of their civil and human right to proper health care, receive compensation or adequate treatment for serious medical needs. As a consequence, I was transferred from one prison to another to undermine my legal activities against the state of Alabama, its parole and prison system. I also personally experienced medical neglect and was misdiagnosed by the medical staff. 2 years prior to my release from the custody of Alabama Department of Corrections, I found out that I had colon cancer rather than the anemia that ADOC had previously diagnosed. I believe that the ADOC intentionally misdiagnosed my illness. However, this came to me as no surprise. It's not unusual for the Alabama Department of Corrections to ignore an incarcerated person's health issue if the treatment may be too costly. This is a denial of basic human, constitutional, and civil rights. The pain and misery I suffered in reaction to the chemo treatments since my release is evidence to me that such barbaric practices by the Alabama Department of Correction need to end, need to end, need to end. Furthermore, the Alabama prison system has cruelly and indifferently used psychotropic drugs to manage a major portion of the prison population. Vulnerable prisoners who thought they were getting a free high by signing on as mentally dysfunctional person. Damage to the psyche varies from one incarcerated person to another. Some reacted violently from the drugs. This gave prison authorities the justification to abuse them physically, brutally beating them into paralysis or mental instability. They knocked their eyeballs out and thought it was funny. They knocked incarcerated people in the head until they were irrational and literally insane, all the while with impunity. My experience within the Alabama prison system is reflective of a larger national health crisis that affects many political prisoners and other incarcerated persons in the U.S. who are frequently denied necessary medical care and treatment. Failure to provide medical care is a direct violation of Article 25 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights and the 8th Amendment. The 8th Amendment requires the U.S. to provide medical care to prisoners. Recently, political prisoner Muhammad Abu Jamal filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania State Prison staff for medical neglect. He was diagnosed with hepatitis C in 2012 and hasn't received any treatment for his life-threatening disease. According to the San Francisco Bay View, Abu Jamal is one of thousands of prisoners in the United States with hepatitis C, and virtually none are given any treatment for it. New antiviral medications have had over 95% success in curing hepatitis C. However, the drug would cost close to $100,000 in the U.S. through the pharmaceutical company's monopoly pricing. Robert Seth Hayes, a former member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army and a political prisoner, is also denied treatment for hepatitis C. Jay Chase, another political prisoner, has been denied proper diet and supplements needed not for hepatitis C, but to treat Huntington's disease. Medical neglect is cruel and inhumane. No human being should be subject to such degrading treatment. The violation of human rights to medical care for political prisoners is a long-standing issue. It continues today. mainly because prisoners are a vulnerable and highly invisible population. Up until this point, prisoners have attempted to file lawsuits in order to remedy the violations. We demand that a medical staff should be subjected to monitoring by the Health and Human Services, or an administrative body of the ABOC be required to compile data on the basis upon which they have selected a majority portion of the black and full white incarcerated person for dispensing psychotropic drugs. C, federal and state laws be enacted to give authorization to charge medical staff, doctors, or nurses with murder, and then murder an incarcerated person by distributing the wrong medicine to them, or show a deliberate indifference to serious medical need, especially when such indifference result in the death of an incarcerated person. D, all political prisoners should be paid reparations specifically, and all descendants enslaved in North America for enslavement and for de facto and de jure discrimination. Thank you. Because they're on some form of psychotropic drugs. You find people who have been ill, but whose the indifference shown them for their illness has taken them in a more drastic condition. Their condition is deteriorated even worse than it originally was had they been given proper and adequate medical care and attention. You would find that there are people who have information to share of people who have died because they were given the wrong medication, and they were died or killed with impunity because it's possible that they were involved in having a jailhouse lawyer do litigation against the hospital staff, and so they saw an opportunity to get rid of him and moot the issue that he raised in his litigation. And of course, the jailhouse lawyer would be handicapped because once without him, there would be no basis to continue the litigation.
You mentioned psychotropic drugs, as well as possibly being given the wrong medication. Just want to ask, would there be safeguards under both federal and state laws that ought to prevent this, but which is not being complied with?
There should be, but I'm not aware of any. It's the privatization of the medical system and the prison system, and they allow them to do whatever they want to do, however they choose to do it, and they interpret things the way they see their particular needs. As long as they're able to provide thousands of inmates with drugs, then they're able to keep the pharmaceutical company happy because they have to purchase those drugs from them. So they are not in a hurry to rectify the problem because we're in an invisible society. No one really pays attention. They figure, if you committed a crime, then whatever condition you're subjected to should be appropriate to satisfy the needs of the public to vindicate the wrongs you committed against them. Your humanity is, deminimized.
Yeah, as it was during the enslavement. I have one comment and one question. You, in your presentation, thank you for that, you mentioned Mumia Abu Jamal. The working group is aware about the situation, and last April we sent an allegation letter to the federal state, Justice State Department, about this situation. We got an answer saying they are not able to answer about this particular situation, and this informers they will send our demand to as a state level, but till now we did not answer. That's why, and because the situation is not only affecting Mumia specifically, but also in Pennsylvania, particularly around 10,000 persons victims of hepatitis C. That's why we have decided to work on amicus curiae brief, and it is we are working on it till now. But for the allegation letter, I have to mention it was also endorsed by the Special Rapporteur on Torture and special reporter on conditional health, the right of health, the right to health, sorry. My question is more, I would like to ask you, why after 47 years were you released, on which basis? Because you were not guilty? And
So on what basis was I raised?
released?
I was released because organizations across the country asserted themselves and petitioned the government, and they had phone marathons for several days prior to my last parole hearing, demanding my release, and that no was not an option. And of course, senators from the Alabama Senate Department came in and spoke on my behalf, who knew me from the civil rights days and my involvement in the organizations that I addressed in my report. And so they came forward and said that they thought that it was overdue that I should be released. And the attorneys that were present spoke on my behalf and gave me good conduct reports and my continuing efforts to assist and aid my people throughout my incarceration. It's a sacrifice of my own personal needs. And so they were successful. Although the DOC did come forth and attempt to try to undermine it by placing false charges against me on different little items, but they thought that it would work to get the parole board to say no. Parole board pushed it aside and said, not this time. You know, too many times we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated by the things that you brought into the hearing, try to get us to say no, but this time the answer is yes, we're going to release him. So I was released June 30th, 2014.
Thank you. And I have another question. I have another question about the medical issue. Where we can get some statistic on how many inmates, not only in Mississippi, but more generally across the country, is ill with hepatitis C or cancer or asthma or very important ill. Is it possible to get such statistic?
I'm not sure that information would be put forward because it would be incriminating against the Department of Corrections, Department of Corruption as we call them. To put forth information that would reveal that they have been doing things illegally and inhumanely would probably be something not to be expected of them. But they have departments within the Department of Corrections that compile the statistics of life in prison. Now, whether or not they would cover the medical issues and the medical deficiencies, I doubt very well they would allow themselves to paint their own selves ugly. So,
but if any of you could get such information, it could be helpful for our report.
I'll make some inquiries about that and see whether we can come up with something.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just have two questions. The first one relates to your incarceration. Is it my understanding that there was no trial? Because I see that you said you were falsely accused.
Right.
And secondly, after your release, I would imagine that the prison system has a rehabilitation component to it. I would like to know if there was any post program that you have put in after your release. Thank you.
I was given a trial. The trial at the time had an all-white jury, and I was accused of killing 2 white men. So therefore, it was inevitable that I was found guilty no matter what evidence was put forth to the contrary. sometimes later on, after I was being incarcerated as a jailhouse lawyer and a very proficient litigator, I was able to show that my conviction should be overturned. And so they laughed and said, yeah, so what? As far as we concerned, you're the man. So they never, even though there were other guys who were with me, who were tried at the same time I was, they overturned their convictions. They put mine on hold and said, not this time. In reference to the last part of your question.
That is the post program that you're completing.
When I was released to a halfway house for 1 year. And I stayed there on my own. It wasn't mandatory or obligatory for me to go there. I went there on my own so that I would have some means of getting my balance before I took upon the responsibility of going out into society to fend for myself. It was during my stay at the halfway house that I discovered that I didn't have anemia or colon cancer. And so I've been undergoing treatment for that ever since. So my health has been up and down, and I applaud myself for having this time been able to come here and talk without having breathing problems or being unable to walk, because those are some of the side effects of my chemo treatment from time to time. But no, they didn't provide anything, no compensation for wrongful incarceration. Whenever I approached the idea, they laugh about it. So once my health is kind of been more in my control, I plan to pursue litigation to challenge them for that.
Thank you very much. My question was about compensation, and you've just answered that. The other question that I had was with regards to access to people who are incarcerated, detainees who are there. Did you have visits by civil society, by religious personnel? What kind of access did you have to the outside world when you were incarcerated?
Well, I had pretty much, an open hand on as to who and what I wanted to communicate with outside. Although they did interfere with my mail for quite some time, I won litigation challenging them to stop interfering with my mail going in or out. And from that point on, I was still subjected to censorship, editing, and misplaced mail. So I was able to communicate pretty much with whomever I chose. Matter of fact, I even ordered United Nations distribution of Human Rights Committee pamphlets by the stack so that I could pass them out around the prison system.
And my last question is with regards to the Department of Health, whether they have any mandate to oversee the medical staff who are working inside corrections and to look at the health conditions inside prisons and jails in the country.
We would wish that was true. It's very possible that a department or division exists for that purpose, but the DOC, being a state entity, has already paved the way for these things to be overlooked and dismissed as just another convict complaining about his condition. Typical of them, I always got something wrongful to say about the prison system. Never nothing good. Never nothing good. Never nothing good. Seems to be a bad brother, don't it? But it's true. So unless you're willing to be assertive and be proactive and put forward your complaint without any hesitation until someone listens, you're actually left in the hands of the best man wins.
More questions from our side? No?
Thank you very much, Sekou.
Well, thank you too. I appreciate you all for sharing this time with me.
No, we appreciate it.